And today we're talking communication, just a little piece about communication, because that whole topic, books have been written on. And in fact, my guest today has written a book or two. We're talking about clearing the air, effective communication in business. Now, think about it. When there's ineffective communication, whether you're in a small business or a large corporation, it can create a tense environment where people aren't quite motivated to be productive. And in a corporation, that is a real problem. In a small business, if it's just yourself and you're talking with somebody that you're working with a freelancer, that can be a real problem for your business. It costs time, it costs money, and ineffective communication causes stress. Who needs more stress? So I'm delighted to have with me as my guest today, Ell Graniel, founder of Truespeak. Welcome to the show, Elle.
Thank you, Christine. Always happy to have time with you.
I love having conversations with you, Elle. And communication is one of my newer areas of interest in the last few years. And there's just so many facets of it, whether it's written communication or, you're speaking. But today we're really, I think, talking more about, the spoken communication. Are there a few things when you think about people taking words for granted in communication? Are there a few things that come to mind when you think of what people assume, what they take for granted about communicating with other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what's interesting about it, so today we're just talking leadership, right? But communication, the same skills you'd use at work could also be effective at home with, your partners or your kids and vice versa. But when you are a leader, say, and you have a staff meeting and there are no questions, it can very often be assumed that, okay, well, people got it. We'll figure it out as we go along. Whereas most likely it's either I have no idea what you're talking about, so I don't even know where to begin to ask a question. Or if I don't ask questions, then the staff meeting will get over quicker, which is so juvenile, but very, very common thing that you'll hear. And then the third, and the one that kind of breaks my heart, is if I ask a question, I might look stupid. And that goes to old school traumas, right? Of having a poor teacher who would make fun of you in front of the other students, right? If you ask questions. And, so and I taught I taught speech, oral communications for many years. And I can tell you 100%, the only bad questions, like if we can use the word stupid questions is what they used to say, is if, say, you missed the meeting and then you come to the next meeting, you have questions about the last meeting. Mm-hmm. Or you missed a class, right? And you come back and you have questions about, so it's your responsibility to show up prepared. So number one, assuming everybody understands what you're talking about is crazy because we all think so differently. And so if there are no questions, that should be a red flag to you as a leader to go around and think about your team and what they're best at, right? So if there are no questions, I'd say, Christine, so you're good at, and then I'd bring up the part of the presentation, the meeting that I know you're good at already. What are your thoughts on what I said about, leadership at home? And you would, give some feedback. So the other assumption that's made is that we believe when we're communicators that we're giving the whole story. And what I mean by that is most of the time before we speak, we're already thinking. Whoever is listening to you doesn't have any of that thinking. They don't have any of that backstory. So you just dive right in. And we've all had this experience where people go, what are you talking about? Because they jump ship or they skip back to a conversation two minutes ago. And because they were on board, that you're also on board. So those are just a few of like a tip of the iceberg.
Well, and that one is a personal one, near and dear to me, because my husband does that all the time. He starts talking in the middle, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I wasn't on the beginning end of that. So, like, what are you talking about? Oh my gosh, yeah, that is terrible. Yeah, so that's a personal one for me. I'm glad you brought that up.
And what happens is the person thinks you're the one with the problem. Because they were totally on board. The ship had sailed, and they don't know why you're asking, where are we going, right? But it's really that huge gap. There's a whole bunch of unsaid thoughts and words that we're missing. And people will do this regularly. And in the workplace, employees want to look, your staff, your team wants to look intelligent. They want to look on top of it, and they don't want to question authority. That's
Mm,
another problem that us older folks have, mature folks, is not to question authority. And then you have to struggle through, and then it's more stressful. Now you're behind the timeline, so it's always better to ask questions.
right, yeah, and I appreciate you bring that up about asking questions because I'm a questioner at heart. It's just who I've always been, and I'm a true believer in, if something's not clear to, ask that question. And it's sad though that there are so many situations, like you say, people are afraid to ask a question. The leadership needs to step up their game, don't they, to
Mhm.
realize they're doing themselves a disservice if they don't recognize these situations. If they're, making these assumptions about the people they're responsible for, what does that do to the overall working situation? Um,
Mhm.
I would think it's not going to be profitable. I'm thinking.
It's heartbreaking, right? And that's why I wrote the book, The Team Whisperer, because we have a lot of folks now who were bumped up into entry level and mid management, and they're not getting the training necessary. Just
Mm,
because you're a good employee doesn't necessarily mean you're a good leader. And there's a huge difference between managers and leaders, right? Leaders are inspirational. Managers are more about the spreadsheets and the
mhm,
numbers, right? Not the
mhm,
human element of it. And so I just did a vlog on this, VAK. This is common communication, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic
mhm,
processors, right? And so we use all of them, but we favor one. One comes more naturally to us. So if you're a speaker and you're doing a lot of visual stuff and a lot of visual words, and people don't get it, you think they're the one with the problem. Whereas as a leader, what you were just saying, you're the one that needs to be speaking to all three styles.
mm.
You represent and support your entire team, not just the ones that are like you, right? And so if you're too auditory and there's no visuals and you're blah blah blah, your team just zones out, and you think that they're the ones with the problem, but it's because we are mono focused in the certain way. So when you think about in your meetings and your trainings, to be visual, to have some visuals, to use visual words like, do you see that, literally visual words that
Mm,
go, coincide with that. And with, kinesthetic people, they have to physically do it. So it's up to you as a leader to check up on them after they've gone back and applied what it is that they're working on, and say, how's it going? I know that sometimes it's difficult to just come back and do this on your own. So to be very supportive, and say, you know, um, does that feel easy to you? Do you got that? More physical type words with your kinesthetic people. And when you use this triad, and there's another one, R, that's for reading and writing. And the only reason why I don't spend a lot of time there is because those are also covered in the other three, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic.
mm,
And so be mindful about, if somebody doesn't get it, chances are it's your fault. If somebody doesn't get you, because communication is the responsibility of the speaker, good communication, not the listener. That's not your responsibility. You do have a role in it, but the speaker is the leader. And so if somebody doesn't get it, you can tell even by looking at their face if they're not really getting it, right? And
mm,
then you can do those other things too, like, okay, just give me the gist of what you're going to be doing when you go back. Not saying tell me what you heard, being real specific like that. But you say, do you get it? Okay, yeah, I get it. Or if it's visual people, do you see what I mean? Okay, so what's the next step then? Where are you going to take this information? So put the knowledge immediately into action before they even leave the office, or leave the meeting.
Mm.
And then if people don't have any questions, then specifically state, you know, go around and ask people. Remember to ask them in their intelligence so that they're going to say, yes, I get it. And then you can say, well, give me an example of what I mean when I say that.
Mm.
Right. So you're building confidence in people by doing that. And then if they don't have questions because they think they can get out of the meeting earlier, say, okay, good. We still have 10 minutes left. I definitely have more to share with you. So to let them know that if they don't ask questions, the meeting's not ending sooner.
Right, right. Yes, I like how you said about if you're what you say is not received the way you intended it to, it's not on the listener, it's on ourselves of how we delivered that, and that's something that I've recently been educated on, and that whole concept is fascinating to me, as far as how we communicate and why people hear different things. It's, like you always say, well, like, what's the matter? Am I speaking Greek? You know, uh, but it is kind of that way,
Mhm,
because of the different ways we all hear. Um,
mhm.
and yeah, and so yeah, I find that it all of this stuff is it's just fascinating on communication. Do you find that are more people open to learning how to communicate better and to ask better questions? Because I know there for the longest time, I want to say, that people were having a coach. Like, what do I need a coach for? What do I need to learn? It's like I just do business. It's just the way it is. Are more
Mhm,
people opening up to getting some help to make communication better?
mhm.
What are you finding?
I hope so. I mean, because the book, The Team Whisperer, is also a certification, right? So people hire me to come in to train their entry level and middle managers, and most of the time they are very eager and open to the learning. And
Mhm.
when you're a good leader, you're never chastising or telling people that they're doing something wrong. You're going to say, "That's interesting. It's not getting the result you want. Are you open to trying some new things?" If somebody's a little bit resistant. But I do also believe that, or have seen in my experience, that the longer we go a certain way without any course correction, the harder it is to course correct.
Mm.
It usually has to take, like, losing your job, or divorce or something really traumatic has to, rock our world for us to be open to that. And when you're open to getting coaching, what you really, really are opening is to get that stuff out of the hamster wheel of your head that's just spinning around and around and around and around in there with only your previous thoughts and experiences. And when you say things out loud, a lot of times we'll go, I get it now. I had to say it out loud to understand what I need to do. So many times my clients self-coach themselves. They just need to get it out of their heads, and then the message is clearer for the direction that they want to be taking.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is an area though that people have often just taken so for granted, and it's just like, well, I know how to talk to people, I know how to communicate, but when you go deep into it and start pulling these aspects apart, it's like, wow, why should a human be able to just be born and be able to do this? No, it's not possible.
Mhm.
We have to learn how to communicate better. Now, would you say everything that you work with corporate people on is just as applicable to the small business owner, to a solopreneur? Because everybody communicates with somebody.
Yeah,
Um,
is exactly. So yes, definitely. And because if we microdose it down, we're all humans. It doesn't matter if I own my own business, if I'm a gazillionaire, I'm still a human with thoughts, emotions, feelings. I want to be seen, heard, loved, appreciated, right? So when we can help people feel more seen and heard, that's why as a leader, when we ask questions and then we wait for the answer and don't make the assumption that we are talking about earlier, that we already know how this is going to go,
Mhm.
It's kind of like, have you ever had an argument in your head with somebody you really know and love? And you know what they're going to say, and then you're going to say, and you've got this whole crazy thing going in, and your heart rate's increasing, right? And so, why would we put that insanity on ourselves when we could just have no assumptions, just stay open, instead of going, I knew it, I knew this
Yeah.
person never gets it. They're always the weak link on the team. Have some faith and figure out what's your role in it. Why does this continue to happen?
Mm.
Because communication is two people. So we're having a communication. You could have invited me on to talk for 20 minutes about what I do, but that's a monologue.
Mhm.
And people check, unless you're a comedian, people check out during monologues, right? So make sure that you're inviting, and then you're breathing, and you're holding space, and you're listening instead of interrupting. Because if you think they're finished and you interrupt, that is just so, so rude. Let
Mhm.
them finish. And if they go off on a tangent, then you can say, okay, wait, hold on. We're talking about apples, not oranges. So we'll get to oranges later, right? So that's a different kind of example or exception to the rule, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. This is again, it's just a fascinating topic. This is just a tiny piece, to help people. How can people stay in touch with you? And do you have something that you wanted to offer them?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I'm always open to, I I love communication, so I'm always open to chats, get specifically to what's going on in the direction that you'd like to take it. So that's all on my website, truespeak.us, how to reach me, and the things that I do. Yes. And that being said, I know people love quizzes, right? And assessments, and because it's behind the
Mhm.
scenes, right? It's kind of like, and so anyhow, so I have an assessment called the Success Mindset Scorecard. And what it does is, when you're done, it tells you if what you think you want and what you're doing are aligned,
Mm.
because you won't get what you want. You can think it until the cows come home. But if your actions don't support that, so the Success Mindset Scorecard tells you where your strengths are in your actions, your thoughts and actions, and where your weaknesses are, where they're
Mm.
incongruent. So the Success Mindset Scorecard, it's free. You can take it anytime, and then you'll get your score in the different areas. And I like it because there's no wrong. It's not a test.
Mhm.
You don't get an A, B, C, D, or F or whatever. And it's very enlightening, if for people who answer honestly. You learn a lot. It's very eye opening. So yeah, that's the um, that's the Success Mindset Scorecard. So thanks for asking.
Oh, thank you. And our listeners can go to the bit.ly link, bit.ly/success with L, to get that. Now, I do have one final question for you, Elle, and it really isn't about communication, or maybe it is about communication. I don't know. But when you think about your business, all these years
Mm.
that you've been working in your business, is there something that comes to mind that you say, "Oh my goodness, when I learned this, when I hit upon this," is there something that made it click in your business?
Yes, hands down. So thanks. I like impromptu questions because they really make the brain fire up. Is teamwork. So many of us, and as it's not a man or a woman type of thing, but we feel like we can and should do it all, especially the older we are, the more success we
Mhm.
achieve. So when I opened myself up to hiring people to do things that I don't enjoy and they love, lights them up, hiring people to be accountability partners. So
Mhm.
once I opened myself up to not wearing all the hats, everything shifted. Life got better, easier, more productive. And so I wish I had done that a lot earlier, because I've been at this almost 30 years now.
Mm.
And I've really only made that shift maybe not even 10 years ago, to really opening up the team. And so I would recommend to everybody, and people say they don't have the money, but you don't have the money because you're trying to do everything, right? So you're wasting time doing things like updating your website, and that's not your skill set, and it takes you 2 hours where you could have been doing what you do, you know, making 10 times what you would pay somebody to do that. So stay in your what they call your zone of genius. Do what lights you up, and everything. Once you have more light in your life, everything's just starts to become more evident, right, for your direction and your path and your growth.
Oh, great advice. Thank you so much for that, Elle. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Make It Click.
Yay! It was fun. Looking forward.